SLT අලුත් මෙගා ලයින් කනෙක්ෂන් වලට 50%ක දීවන. තවත් ඔෆර් ගැන දැනගන්න 12112 අමතන්න.
Tonight, 7 down, 2 to go. More questions on the relevance of provincial councils.
So if we are going to change the system, then we have to come up with some alternatives for the provincial system.
We should do that, strengthening local government systems in the country.
When you compare the cost-benefit ratio, cost is very high, benefit for the people is very, very low in certain provincial councils.
Brewing lack of faith. A no-confidence motion could be in the pipelines against the Minister of Finance. A gloomy prediction. Climate change expected to impact Sri Lanka's economic growth by 1.2%. The man who revealed all in cuffs. WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange arrested at London's Ecuador embassy. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Thursday, the 11th of April 2019.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamma Kanayagan. Now let's start you off with your local stories. The International Labour Organization, which is the oldest specialized body of the United Nations, marks its centenary this year. In line with the world celebrations, the International Labour Organization and the Ministry of Labour and Trade Union Affairs organized an event in Colombo which saw the Sri Lankan government symbolically depositing a ratification instrument of ILO's Protocol of 2014 of the Forced Labour Convention. The event was held under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena, diplomats, government officials, trade union leaders, employers, representatives and private sector organizations. It's important to highlight that Sri Lanka is the first country in South Asia and the second in Asia to ratify the instrument. A special issue of the Sri Lanka Labour Gazette, which is a quarterly publication on labour relations and statistics by the Ministry of Labour, was also issued to mark the event. What's more, a postal stamp and a first day cover were also released during the event in cooperation with the Ministry of Posts and Postal Services.
The stamp and first day cover is based on
Now, circling back to one of the prominent stories of the day, a group of former members of the Southern Provincial Council met the chairman of the Election Commission today and requested a possible date to hold elections for the province. Provincial Council elections continue to be delayed, with 7 out of 9 already expired. Venerable Dr. Omalpe Sobhithera recently raised questions over the relevance of provincial councils in present-day Sri Lanka, given the fact that provincial administration continue to function even without elected councils. First at 9 spoke to several preeminent persons on the subject, with views being expressed for and against the system.
The term of office of the Southern Provincial Council ended yesterday. Accordingly, the administration of the 7 out of 9 provincial councils was brought under governors in the respective provinces. The Western Provincial Council is slated to end its term on the 21st of this month, while the Provincial Council's term will end this September. Meanwhile, a group of former UPFA Council members of the Southern Provincial Council, together with civil activist group Truth Searchers, handed over a letter to the chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, requesting the Election Commission to make a preliminary notice within 10 days announcing a possible date to hold elections to elect members for the Southern Provincial Council. Meanwhile, Venerable Dr. Omar Pesob Thera recently insisted that it is high time for the government to do away with the provincial council system, since the purpose for which the system was originally introduced now ceases to exist. The Thera said that there is no need for provincial council elections to be held either, as provincial administration is being done unhindered, even at a time when 7 out of Sri Lanka's 9 provincial councils are not functioning. Meanwhile, several individuals expressed their views of the existing provincial council system in the country. However, speaking to First at 9, Executive Director of the People's Action for Free and Fair Election organisation said that the country must look for an alternative if it is to do away with the provincial council.
I would urge caution on people who want to shut down the provincial council system. I would say let's do it better. Let's do it in a cleaner way, where, for example, we don't have the most popular schools being carved out and taken over by the central government. Let's give the popular schools back to the provinces where they are located, to have them as their flagship institutions. And let's have things like the National Water Board become simply a support organization, and the existing water resource centers, which are all very close to the people in the provinces, let them do their job. And this is not something that, even according to the existing constitution, the central government should be doing. We should not have a water services minister. So I think if we have a clear picture of what decentralization of government functions is, I think we will all be better, rather than revisit the old tired debates of the 1980s.
However, speaking to First at 9, Executive Director of the People's Action for Free and Fair Election organisation said that the country must look for an alternative if it is to do away with the provincial council.
At this time, we need to demand the government to have a provincial elections. The provincial system introduced to settle the ethnic issue. So if we are going to change the system, then we have to come up with some alternatives or some sort of power sharing mechanism for the provincial system.
Meanwhile, expressing diverging views, National Coordinator of the Centre for Monitoring Election Violence said that the provincial system should be strengthened for best results.
If we are talking on cancelling of provincial council systems and annulling of 13th Amendment, it might be problems. We should strengthen in local government systems in the country. We can gain more advantages than prevailing provincial councils. Current incumbent government should hold periodical elections at the moment.
Veteran politician Hemakumara Nanayakkara highlighted provincial councils incur high cost as opposed to its benefits.
When you compare the cost-benefit ratio, cost-benefit ratio cannot be justified. Cost is very high, benefit for the people is very, very low in certain provincial councils. Some provincial councillors are making money like nobody's business. Before having the next provincial council elections, it is up to the people to get together and have a dialogue about how we should restructure the provincial councils.
Now, opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa is critical of the government's lack of consideration of the elderly, saying that their allowances must be hiked while eliminating any unnecessary costs thrust upon them. The opposition leader expressed these views at an event held in Tangle today. I heard that the allowances given to the elderly are being pruned and that they have to at least pay 200 rupees to go to a nearby post office to collect these allowances. They are requesting that this amount be given through the relevant Grama Seva officer. On one hand, the allowances of the elderly are being pruned by the government, and on the other, they have to bear unnecessary costs. At the end, they are left with nothing. The allowances given to the elderly must surely be increased, and these must be sent to their homes. This can be done through the Grama Seva offices. UPFA parliamentarian S.B. Dissanayake alleges that Minister of Finance Mangala Samaravira has a hidden agenda, where the minister is working towards gaining a position within the United Nations. He says that Minister Samaravira aims to get there by betraying Sri Lanka's war heroes and promised to bring a no-confidence motion against the minister. Meanwhile, addressing the same media briefing today, UPFA parliamentarian Dr. Bandula Gunawardena was also on board the no-confidence motion against the Minister of Finance, but over a different reason. Standing orders of Parliament clearly say that the report of the Sectoral Oversight Committee on Economic Development should be tabled within 4 days after the second reading of the budget. The chairman of this committee is MP Sumandiran, and I'm a member as well. However, they tabled it only 2 days before the third reading of the budget. It says that the Ministry of Finance has failed to provide further information on certain necessary elements. So it's clear that parliamentarians voted for a fake budget. I hope to propose a no-confidence motion against the Finance Minister over the presentation of a fake budget.
විශ්වාස භංග යෝජනාවක් ගෙන එන නිසා අපිට මේ කරදරයෙන් බේරෙන්න.
We could have got rid of this burden of international interferences the very moment when the United States left the United Nations. Now all the allegations against the LTT terrorists are on our war heroes. What is the real intention of Mangala Samaravira? He is expecting a position in the United Nations after 2025. It is for this position that Mangala has been betraying war heroes and conducting investigations against the country. Therefore, we expect to bring a no-confidence motion against him over this as well. Now, a parliamentarian of the United National Party, Mujibur Rahman, and Professor Ashu Marasinghe have requested Speaker Karu Jayasuriya to take immediate action against the Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who held the position during the 51-day government in November last year. The duo alleges that parliamentary privileges have been violated after the then Secretary sent a letter to the heads of Sri Lankan diplomatic missions abroad. The particular letter had addressed the relevant diplomats on the ongoing political impasse at the time. The two UNP parliamentarians insist that the content in the letter is defamatory to the Speaker while accusing the Speaker of creating uncertainty in Parliament. They went on to request the Speaker to take necessary action against the responsible persons through the Parliamentary Act. The Vehicle Importers Association points out that vehicle imports of the first 3 months of the year have declined considerably. In the meantime, the Department of Motor Traffic also accepts that there have been a slowdown in new vehicle registrations and points to new taxes imposed by the budget as well as changes made to loan facilities.
Imports of vehicles over the first 3 months of this year have notably declined in comparison to last year. A total of 480,799 vehicles were registered last year, out of which 124,472 were registered for the first 3 months of 2018, where only 103,671 were registered the same period this year. Commissioner General of Department of Motor Traffic Jagat Chandrasiri, who explained possible reasons behind the decline, said that changes in new motor taxes and bank loan facilities are to be blamed. In the meantime, the chairman of the Sri Lanka Vehicle Importers Association, Sampath Merenchige, said that although 80,000 to 90,000 vehicles were imported in previous years, it has decreased by 500. He further said that vehicles which are only below 1000 cc will be imported in the future due to the downward trend in demand.
We've got more local stories coming up on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now let's take a look at some stories making news across Sri Lanka in brief.
Actor Ryan Van Rooyen, who was arrested in Dubai and was deported to Sri Lanka recently, was further remanded until the 25th of April after he was produced before the Mathura Magistrates Court today. Ryan Van Rooyen and 4 other suspects who were arrested with Markandre Madush at a party in Dubai were deported to Sri Lanka on the 3rd of April. Ryan was questioned for over 18 hours by the Criminal Investigations Department and the Police Narcotics Bureau at the Bandaranaike International Airport before he was handed over to Valigama Police over the possession of cannabis. The other 4 suspects deported to Sri Lanka were released following extensive questioning. An airline staff member has been arrested at the Bandaranaike International Airport over an attempt to smuggle out 40 gold biscuits weighing 4 kilograms. The gold biscuits are estimated to be valued at 32 million rupees. Customs officials attached to the BIA are conducting further investigations into the incident. A group who identified themselves as the Anti-Ragging Committee of Ava Group pasted handbills at the University of Jaffna within its premises last night. The posters claim that the Ava gang was formed to ensure the safety of women and that it has connections with nearly 40% of the campus students. The posters say that if incidents of ragging of freshmen occur within the university, the group will take action against it.
Now, the International Monetary Fund places Sri Lanka among countries having high levels of commercial debt with rising interest burdens that are vulnerable to rollover risks. Releasing the latest fiscal monetary report, it says the removal of tax exemptions and improving administrative efficiency would yield more revenue for priority initiatives. The latest fiscal monetary report issued by the International Monetary Fund states that many economies, including Egypt, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, saw rising interest burdens by the beginning of 2018, which exceeds 20% of total revenue. According to the report, these emerging market economies are vulnerable to rollover risks if they face large financing needs. It further reads that fiscal developments in 2018 did not reverse the structural revenue and spending trends of the past decade. According to the IMF, Sri Lanka's maturing debt in 2019 is 13.5% of the gross domestic product, falling to 12% in 2020. It also says that total financing need is 18.1% of the GDP this year, with the percentage falling to 15.5% next year. The report added that Sri Lanka was among countries that faced tighter financing conditions and rising risk premiums last year. Speaking of measures to mitigate the situation, IMF said the removal of tax exemptions in countries like Argentina, China, Sri Lanka and Turkey, while improving administrative efficiency, would yield more revenue for priority initiatives. At a subsequent news conference, the Division Chief of Monetary and Capital Markets Department of the IMF, Annalena, however, stated that countries should tackle high debt burdens through a comprehensive set of measures. Speaking further, she said that these measures include, quote, a careful monitoring of debt vulnerabilities, improved debt data transparency, and increased debt management capacity, unquote. Moreover, she said, quote, looking across low-income and developing countries, we can see that public debt levels have increased significantly in recent years in many of those countries, unquote. The central bank launched a roadmap providing a broad direction to financial regulators and financial institutions to effectively manage environmental, social and governance risks associated with projects that they finance and help increase assistance to businesses that are greener, climate-friendly and socially inclusive. It was launched at the Sustainable Banking Network Global Meeting of the International Finance Corporation in Washington yesterday. The roadmap, themed as a roadmap for sustainable finance in Sri Lanka, cautioned that Sri Lanka may face a 1.2% loss of annual GDP by 2050 if measures are not taken to address the issue of climate change. The roadmap highlighted that the country is facing increasing environmental and climate challenges with frequent natural disasters, deforestation and forest degradation, degradation of coastal and marine ecosystems, and a loss of biodiversity which hinder its sustainable economic growth. With Sri Lanka being one of the biodiversity hotspots in the world, it is estimated that additional investment of 30 billion rupees within next 5 years is needed to achieve national biodiversity targets and to avoid future expenses related to biodiversity restoration and management.
A roadmap for sustainable finance in Sri Lanka was launched in Washington yesterday, articulating a series of strategic activities to implement sustainable finance in the country, while detailing an action plan to be implemented over short, medium and long term. The roadmap attempts to scale up the contribution of the financial sector to help build a more resilient, sustainable green economy by providing policy guidelines and recommendations for responding to ESG risks and sustainable finance opportunities. The strategic activities encompassed in the roadmap revolve around 6 focus areas named Financing Vision 2030, ESG integration into financial market, financial inclusion, capacity building, international cooperation, and measurement and reporting. It has been identified that further investments are needed in the 8 sectors of agriculture and food, education, energy, health, marine resources, transport, urban development, and physical planning and water. The roadmap further recommended regulators to develop specific sustainable loan guidelines or standards that guide sustainable loans, while highlighting that leasing is an effective way to enable sustainable business by reducing upfront costs, and that it could focus on funding sustainable projects and funding in a sustainable way. Noting that green bond market has grown rapidly, the roadmap recommends to adopt international standards on sustainable bonds and develop necessary domestic guidance and operational tools to enable sustainable bond issuance, including taxonomy, methods to quantify the sustainable impacts of bonds, and guidance on reporting. Central Bank highlights that such guidance and tools could cover sustainable financial bonds, sustainable corporate bonds, sustainable asset-backed securities, and other financial products. The central bank went on to say that it is critical to provide operational tools to strengthen ESG disclosure and mainstream ESG issues throughout financial institution risk management and decision-making processes. It calls on financial institutions to disclose both positive and negative environmental and social impacts generated through investment, disclose sustainability policies and programs implemented within the organization. Noting that the country has made considerable progress in financial inclusion, as there is high level of physical access to financial institutions with more branches opening up in rural areas, the central bank says that there remains challenges in increasing the financial literacy and financial awareness to enable clients to use financial services effectively, and in improving payments and settlement systems. Limited or no access to the formal financial sector is still faced by micro, small and medium enterprises, low-income households, youth and women. The roadmap recommends to introduce grants and risk-sharing facilities to support sustainable startups while supporting fintech companies, and the development of digital tools by providing them with a regulatory sandbox to test fintech solutions towards financial inclusion. It has also been recommended to establish a clear and detailed taxonomy for sustainable activities, to create a common language for all actors in the financial sector, and introduce a statistics system to track sustainable finance flows and impacts. IFC, a member of the World Bank Group, served as the Secretariat and Technical Advisor for the roadmap, while the UNDP provides funding support through the Biodiversity Finance Initiative.
A new chairperson has been appointed to the Board of Investments of Sri Lanka. The President's Media Division says that Mangala P. Biyapa has received his appointment as the new chairman of the BOI at the official residence of the President today. Meanwhile, Senior Professor Chandrika Wijeratne has been appointed as the new Vice-Chancellor of the University of Colombo. She also received her appointment letter from President Maithripala Sirisena at the President's official residence this morning. And now to give you a market update, the all-share price index ended marginally weaker at 5,576.11 today, with a turnover of 459.76 million rupees, less than this year's daily average of 618 million rupees. Foreign investors sold a net 164.9 million rupees worth of shares, extending the year-to-date net foreign outflow to 6.1 billion rupees worth of equities. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan rupee closed slightly firmer today, supported by dollar inflows from remittances ahead of the traditional New Year, while stocks ended lower due to foreign outflows in moderate trade. It closed 176 rupees and 49 cents against the US dollar. The rupee dropped 16% in 2018 and was one of the worst performing currencies in Asia due to heavy foreign outflows. With that, now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies around the world. Co-founder of WikiLeaks Julian Assange is finally in cuffs. Await details on the other side of this break.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now, UK police finally have their hands on Julian Assange, the man who co-founded WikiLeaks, releasing thousands and thousands of confidential government documents from various states to the public. He was holed up at the Ecuadorian embassy in London over the last 7 years seeking asylum. WikiLeaks said that Assange did not leave the embassy and that police arrested their co-founder within the Chancery building. Yesterday, WikiLeaks claimed that it uncovered a comprehensive spying operation against Assange. Julian Assange, co-founder of WikiLeaks, took refuge at the Ecuadorian embassy in London 7 years ago to avoid extradition to Sweden over a sexual assault case. At the time, Assange claimed that the case was filed with political motivations, and since then it has been dropped. Today, the Metropolitan Police announced the arrest of Assange at London's Ecuadorian embassy over failure to surrender to court. Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno said it withdrew Assange's asylum after his repeated violations to international conventions. But WikiLeaks tweeted that Ecuador had acted illegally in terminating Assange's political asylum in violation of international law. In a follow-up tweet, WikiLeaks said that the Ecuadorian ambassador invited British police into the embassy and Assange was immediately arrested. A possible expulsion of Assange from the Ecuadorian embassy was brewing for some time, and WikiLeaks editor-in-chief made this revelation to Reuters yesterday.
WikiLeaks uncovered an extensive spying operation against Julian Assange within the Ecuadorian embassy. It entails a total invasion of privacy of Mr. Assange, and what we have established is that security cameras were used to monitor his every move, his every meeting with visitors, and it included video recordings, photographs and audio recordings from various recorders inside the embassy. We also know that there was a request to hand over visitors' logs from the embassy and video recordings from within the security cameras in the embassy. So we assume that this material, this extensive material that has been gathered, has been handed over to the Trump administration. And the Moreno government in Ecuador has been all too willing to help out by pushing Julian Assange out of the embassy.
Moving on to UK's divorce from the European Union, the Union leaders have granted UK a 6-month extension to Brexit after late-night talks in Brussels. New deadline is the 31st of October, and it averts the prospect of the UK having to leave the EU without a deal tomorrow, as MPs are still deadlocked over a deal. European Council President Donald Tusk said his message to British friends was, "Please do not waste this time." Leaders of the European Union's remaining 27 member countries agreed to another Brexit extension that will delay the UK's departure until the 31st of October at a special EU summit in Brussels yesterday. A statement released by the EU after marathon closed-door talks read that such an extension should last only as long as necessary and in any event no longer than the 31st of October. It added that if the withdrawal agreement is ratified by both parties before this date, the withdrawal will take place on the first day of the following month. The EU underlined that if Britain is still a member of the bloc and if it has not ratified the withdrawal agreement by the 22nd of May, it must hold elections to the European Parliament, otherwise Brexit will take place on the 1st of June. President of the European Commission Jean-Claude Juncker meanwhile warned that the extra time won't be used for further negotiations and that there can be no reopening of the withdrawal agreement. In response, British Prime Minister Theresa May told the press in Brussels that she continues to believe that Britain needs to leave the European Union with a deal as soon as possible. The world's biggest democratic exercise, the Indian general election, got underway today with Indians voting in the first phase of it, which is seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Some observers have billed this as the most important election in decades, and the tone of the campaign has been acrimonious. Modi, the Hindu nationalist BJP's main vote-getter, is under criticism for failing to meet promises he made in 2014 on economic growth and job creation. The BJP faces challenges from strong regional parties and a resurgent Congress party led by Rahul Gandhi. India's mammoth general election began today with people starting to line up outside polling stations in the world's biggest democratic exercise that will be carried out in 7 phases. Voting in the first of 7 rounds is being held in 91 parliament constituencies across 20 states and federally administered regions. There are 543 seats at stake. Security, meanwhile, has been increased after 7 people were killed in militant attacks in Kashmir and the east of the country, including a state legislator from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling party. Almost 900 million people of India's 1.3 billion people are eligible to vote. The first phase of voting covers an electorate of 142 million. Spread over 39 days, the final phase of the election will be held on the 19th of May and the result will be announced on the 23rd of the same month. Chairman of the Selection Committee of Sri Lanka Cricket, Asantha Dimel, says that the Sri Lankan squad for the ICC Cricket World Cup set to get underway next month will be finalised by the 18th of this month. The final chance for the players to stake a claim for a place in the side, the Provincial Limited Overs tournament, also came to a conclusion today. Sri Lanka Cricket Super Provincial Limited Overs Tournament 2019, which was worked off for players to showcase their talents ahead of the World Cup next month, concluded today. The final was played between Galle and Colombo at Rangiri Dambuli International Cricket Stadium. The match, however, was disrupted by rain and the organisers decided to abandon the final. Accordingly, the trophy was shared by Galle and Colombo teams. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Selection Committee of Sri Lanka Cricket, Asantha Dimel, said that as the tournament was over, they will be finalising the Sri Lankan squad for the World Cup by the 18th of this month. He added that the captain of the team will be selected later after finalising the 15-member squad. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.